Have you ever felt like the life you're living isn't truly yours? As if every decision, every word you speak, every gesture you offer carries an invisible weight. The weight of expectations that aren't yours. The weight of pleasing others, of fitting in, of not disappointing. And little by little you begin to disappear. Not all at once, but in quiet, subtle ways. You go silent inside, and no one notices. Maybe you were the good daughter, the dependable friend, the understanding partner, the worker who never says no. But inside there's a voice you've learned to ignore. That voice is your true self. It whispers when you smile on the outside, but ache inside. It screams in silence when you say yes, while every part of you wants to say no. It fades when you force yourself to become what others need and forget what you truly need. This silence isn't peace, it's self-abandonment. Denying yourself is like building a home on sand. Everything seems fine until the storm comes. And when it comes, it doesn't always look like thunder. It can come as anxiety, as exhaustion, as a quiet sorrow you can't name. When you don't choose yourself, the world shapes you, but never really holds you. You spend a lifetime trying to be enough, good enough, kind enough, strong enough, without realizing that enough has become a prison. And the cruelest part? We learn this too young. As children, we absorb the unspoken rule. If I'm quiet, if I'm good, if I meet their needs, maybe then I'll be loved. So we become who they need us to be, not because we're weak, but because we're human. We need to belong. And in that pursuit, we slowly walk away from ourselves, until one day something breaks. A moment of grief, a panic attack, a burnout, or maybe just a long, empty silence that asks, whose life is this? This is the starting point of every transformation. Not the breakthrough, not the victory, but the ache. The moment when you realize I cannot keep abandoning myself to be loved. And from this moment, everything begins to change. There is a moment in life, soft, almost unnoticeable, when something inside you says enough. It's not loud, it doesn't come with fireworks or declarations. It comes quietly, like a tired breath after years of carrying a weight that was never yours. You don't always know what's happening at first. You just stop apologizing for existing. You cancel that meeting you never wanted to attend. You sit in your car for 5 extra minutes, not because you're tired, but because for once, you're listening to yourself. This is the awakening of self-love. And no, it's not a pretty quote on social media. It's not bubble baths or scented candles. It's raw, it's trembling, it's you meeting yourself for the first time without judgment. Most people think choosing yourself is selfish, but self-love isn't about putting yourself above others. It's about refusing to put yourself beneath them. For years, you learned to betray yourself in small ways, staying silent to avoid conflict, smiling to hide the pain, agreeing to things that made your soul shrink. But every time you abandoned yourself, you taught your inner world a dangerous lie. My needs don't matter. And that lie becomes a wound, a quiet ache that grows louder with time. Then one day, without warning, you stop. You choose to listen to the ache. You don't run from it. You sit with it. You ask, what are you trying to show me? And the answer often comes in tears, in long-forgotten memories, in moments when you see yourself in the mirror and whisper, I deserve more than this. That's when the shift begins. You start noticing what drains you, what excites you, what feels like truth, and what feels like a mask. You begin to unlearn the habits of self-erasure and learn the sacred practice of self-respect. This awakening is not loud. It doesn't demand attention. It's a quiet rebellion, a soft but powerful declaration. I will no longer abandon myself to be loved. And from this place, you rise. When you begin to choose yourself, something remarkable happens. Quietly, almost instinctively, you start saying no, not out of anger, not to punish others, but because for the first time, you feel worthy of space. For years, you may have believed that love meant self-sacrifice. That to be kind, you had to be endlessly available, that your value came from how much of yourself you gave away. So you allowed too much, You tolerated too much. You absorbed everyone else's chaos, hoping they would one day return the favor with care. But they didn't, and deep down you knew they wouldn't. Boundaries are not walls, they are doors. They don't keep love out. They show you who knows how to walk in with respect. When you choose yourself, your boundaries stop being excuses. They become sacred. You begin to feel the difference between being generous and being used, between being compassionate and being depleted. And it changes everything. You no longer explain yourself for needing rest. You stop justifying your worth. You no longer tolerate relationships that demand your silence. It's not always easy. Setting boundaries can feel like betrayal, especially if you've spent your life being the peacekeeper. But peace that costs your soul isn't peace. It's suppression. There will be guilt at first, that quiet voice inside that says they won't understand, and maybe they won't. But your healing was never meant to be understood by those committed to your old wounds. Your no becomes a mirror. Some people will feel threatened by it because your boundary reflects their entitlement. Others will respect it because they know what it means to love someone who also loves themselves. And slowly you begin to realize you were never hard to love. You were just surrounded by people who benefited from your lack of limits. Now your no becomes your compass. It leads you out of obligation and into authenticity. You find freedom in saying, this is what I can offer, and this is what I cannot. It's not about being cold, it's about being whole. And in that wholeness, you become your own sanctuary. There is a moment after the boundaries are drawn, after the masks begin to fall, when you find yourself alone. Not just physically, but emotionally, spiritually. It can feel like a vast silence, stretching far beyond the noise of your former life. No more performing, no more bending, no more pretending, and it's terrifying. Because for so long, your identity was wrapped in your roles: caregiver, peacemaker, helper, achiever. Now stripped of those roles, you're left with just you. And you wonder, who am I without the need to be needed? But slowly, ever so slowly, something begins to shift. What once felt like loneliness begins to feel like space, like room to breathe, like room to hear your own voice again. This is where solitude becomes sacred, not isolation, not avoidance, but presence with yourself. At first, the silence echoes with doubt. Memories rise, regrets whisper. You may even grieve the life you gave away trying to belong. But in that grieving, something powerful emerges. Your true self begins to speak. Not the self shaped by survival, not the version trained to keep the peace, but the soul that remembers who you were before the world told you who to be. You start noticing beauty in simple things. A quiet morning, a single cup of tea, the way the light falls across your face in the mirror. You begin to understand solitude isn't punishment, it's healing. It teaches you that your company is not something to escape from, it is something to return to. And from this place, you stop fearing aloneness, because now you see it for what it truly is: a home, a space where you are not judged, not misunderstood, not required to explain, just known. And it's from this home within that all other relationships begin to change. Choosing yourself doesn't just change your inner world, it changes your outer world too. One of the hardest truths to face on this journey is this: when you stop betraying yourself, some people will feel betrayed, not because you've harmed them, but because your healing interrupts the story they've been living, a story where your role was to make them comfortable, to always say yes, to never need too much. As your boundaries grow stronger, as your solitude becomes your sanctuary, your relationships begin to reveal their true nature. Some will quietly fade, some will fall apart suddenly, others will resist your growth with guilt, anger, or manipulation. It hurts, even when it's necessary. You'll grieve friendships that once felt like home. You'll question if you're doing the right thing. You'll wonder, am I the problem? But you're not. You're just no longer willing to shrink to fit into spaces that demand your silence. The truth is, many relationships were not built on love, but on your ability to self-abandon. And when that stops, the connection unravels. It's not because you became unloving, it's because you started loving yourself. And here's the paradox. The more you choose yourself, the more you attract people who do the same. People who don't flinch at your no, who don't need you to perform, who respect your depth instead of fearing it. But you can't skip the part where it all falls apart, where you sit in the wreckage of old roles and ask, what remains? What remains is truth. What remains is you. Raw, honest, no longer needing to be someone you're not. From here, new relationships will form, slowly, naturally, built not on need but on resonance, not on dependency but on mutual presence. You'll learn that losing people who required your self-denial isn't loss, it's liberation, and you'll no longer trade authenticity for acceptance because you've seen what that costs. And now will you choose peace? There comes a moment, after the silence, after the loss, after the aching rebuild, when something within you begins to rise. It's not a shout, it's not dramatic, it's a whisper at first, but it's yours, your voice. Not the one shaped by fear, not the one trained to say what others want to hear, not the one buried under years of pleasing and proving. No, this is the voice of your truth, of your essence, of your soul. You begin to speak differently. You say what you mean, you stop apologizing for your feelings, your needs, your presence. Your words stop being decorations, they become declarations. For so long, your voice served others. You spoke to keep the peace, to avoid conflict, to be accepted. But that acceptance came at a price, a high one. Every time you silenced yourself to belong, you taught your heart that it wasn't safe to be known. And now, you're unlearning that lie. It begins in small ways. You correct someone when they cross a line. You speak up when something feels wrong. You express what you want, even if it risks discomfort. And each time you do, something inside you strengthens, like a tree remembering its roots, like a flame remembering it was never meant to be hidden. Your voice is not just sound, it's your presence, it's your truth. It's the bridge between your inner world and the outer one. And as you reclaim it, you start to notice. You no longer need to be loud to be heard. You no longer need to explain your worth. You no longer fear being misunderstood, because being understood is no longer the goal. Being real is. This is not just about speaking, it's about knowing what is yours to say. It's about trusting that your truth has weight, and that your boundaries are valid, even if no one else agrees. You become a guardian of your own voice, and that voice, once buried under years of shame and silence, becomes your guide. You don't just speak, you live your truth. And in doing so, you give others permission to do the same. There is a kind of exhaustion that goes deeper than the body. It lives in the soul. It's the fatigue of pretending, of performing, of being everything for everyone while quietly disappearing inside yourself. Anxiety often grows from this place, not just from stress or trauma, but from the slow erosion of authenticity, the constant push to be who the world needs while forgetting who you are. When you choose yourself, the first feeling isn't always peace. Sometimes it's panic, because the old ways no longer work, and the new ways haven't fully arrived, but something begins to shift. Gradually, gently. You start saying no without guilt. You start resting without needing to earn it. You start breathing fully for the first time in years. And with every breath, something inside settles. Not because life becomes perfect, not because you have it all figured out, but because you're no longer fighting yourself. You stop running. You stop chasing approval. You stop rehearsing your worth in the mirror of someone else's eyes. And that creates space. Space for silence, for clarity, for presence. You begin to notice the beauty of the ordinary, how the sunlight dances on your kitchen floor, how your heartbeat slows when you sit with yourself without judgment. Peace is not the absence of chaos. It is the presence of you, fully here, fully now. Anxiety loses its grip not because the world becomes safer, but because you do. You become your own refuge. You become your own anchor. You stop asking, "Am I enough?" Because now, the question dissolves. You are no longer seeking permission to exist. You are existing, fully, honestly, unapologetically, and from this sacred stillness, your life begins to bloom. Have you been choosing yourself or abandoning yourself? Have you been living as a reflection of others' expectations or as a mirror of your soul? What would it feel like to finally say, I am not here to be perfect, I am here to be real? Choosing yourself doesn't mean turning your back on love. It means turning your face toward true love, the kind that starts within. Yes, people may leave, yes, comfort may vanish, but in its place something priceless emerges. Peace, clarity, home. If this video touched something deep inside you, consider leaving a super thanks to support this channel. It helps keep these soul-healing messages alive and reaching others who, like you, are ready to come home to themselves. And if you haven't yet, I invite you to subscribe. Because this journey doesn't end here. There is another step, another layer, another truth waiting to rise. Click on the next video appearing on your screen. It was made for this exact moment in your life. And remember, what you choose not to face within will show up outside, again and again, until you do.